Welcome to Florida Focus, a college football podcast. My name is Brandon. I'm a lifetime Seminole fan.
My name is Jarad, and I'm a lifetime Gator fan.
And we are honored to have Brooke, who's a lifetime UCF fan, join us. Brooke, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah. Lots to talk about here. The Gators do fall to LSU. Florida State finally wins an interesting game against Miami, and UCF just houses Oklahoma State. But as is tradition, we're going to start with the Florida Gators. Jarad, tell me what happened in Death Valley, and are we expecting a bounce back from this, or your take on the loss to the Tigers?
Yeah, I don't think that I would be the person that would have my finger on the pulse of the Gator Nation as far as like the attitude toward the game. But I will say that what happened in Death Valley was pretty much exactly what I expected to happen in Death Valley. I'm not sugarcoating the loss. I'm not hyping it. I'm not sunshine pumping the performance there because it was historically terrible. But, Jaden Daniels goes for 500-plus yards, and I was in a lot of group chats, Thursday, Friday, saying Daniels is going to go for 500 yards, expecting to win the Heisman here. And I think he did it. He's a phenomenal player, and my hat goes off to him. LSU's defense was suspect going in, and we saw that in the game as Florida offense and Graham Mertz continue to find a rhythm and continue to build on it. But what happened in Death Valley was just a culmination of some really, really bad defense for the Florida Gators. And it's a trend that started early on in the season after that big win against Tennessee. And we've seen it progressively get worse. It reared its head against Arkansas and maybe cost the game there when you couldn't get off the field on third down. And we saw that here, right? Early on, you get a big stop, 2 fourth down stops, I believe, early on in the game. And you're thinking, okay, well, we're in business here. Weren't able to capitalize on that as LSU stood tall. And that was a game where you were going to have to score on every drive to be in that thing. And Florida managed to, for the most part, do that until late there in the game. But there's not much good to take away from it, to be honest with you. Austin Armstrong has a lot of questions to answer on defense. The defensive line continues to be incredibly thin and incredibly young. Now, you can look at the youth of the Florida Gators and say maybe you got Kelby Collins playing on the D line. You got TJ Searcy playing on the D line. You got 2 true freshmen there. Shamar James is out, and you're a linebacker, so you're having to rely on Scooby Williams, who's he's a sophomore himself, but he's played a little bit of football, new position. You're out some guys there in the secondary. Devin Moore's hurt, who's he's really needed to start all year long. So you could chalk it up and be like, well, Florida's just a young team. Maybe they'll get better, but even as a young team, you gave up like 700 yards of offense, worse in school history. So a lot of questions there to be answered. There, the Gators. And as far as the bounce back goes, I don't think we see that. I've been pretty vocal about how this year would end throughout the year. I don't see a win against Missouri on the road, who's playing phenomenal football, or at home against Florida State. People look at that game against Florida State and say maybe that's a game you could win. I don't see that. I think they're playing 2 different brands of football. So I don't foresee a bounce back. What you really want to look for moving forward is how does that offense continue to look? Trey Wilson has become a bona fide playmaker and somebody who I think is going to have a very bright future in the SEC. And then your running backs, Montrell Johnson and obviously ETN, are just phenomenal players. So, can your offense continue to score points and keep you in the game and just pray your defense gets a stop? That's going to be the name of the game here in these next 2 weeks.
Gotcha. Looking at, was the second or third quarter, the Gators pulled within a score, and Graham Mertz I guess, didn't have a lot of time. He took 4 sacks and he lost a fumble. What were your thoughts in the middle of the game? Did you think, maybe we're hanging in here, maybe this is a good sign, or did you kind of think, I knew it was coming next?
Well, there were some waiting moments there, right, where you're like, okay, if something happens here, maybe this game could get interesting in the end. I was never confident that Florida was going to pull a win out of Death Valley. There were some moments for sure when you're hyped and you're pumped up and you're like, oh, okay, we're in business now. But you're right. That offensive line for the Gators gives them a lot of issues. Damian George at tackle is just very ineffective. You look at some of the transfers out, Tarquin at USC, maybe Josh Braun at Arkansas, who weren't great, but maybe they provide big depth for the Gators right now. Keontae Goodwin, obviously having to step away, whose mother tragically passed away from cancer, having to step away from the program, was a guy that the Gators were going to really rely on. And probably would have shown up a lot of issues on the offensive line. But unfortunately, life happens, and some things in life are much bigger than football. And so, when you don't have the depth to replace those guys, it's going to get rough. So, to answer your question, I guess, in a long form, I was never worried about the Gators winning that game.
Okay. You've talked a lot this year about LSU secondary. What do you think you saw there, and why did Florida succeed in passing for 311 yards?
That's a phenomenal question. And I've spoken a lot about some of the depth issues they've had, and they've been playing. The LSU was out some guys, so LSU obviously was playing some guys, some new roles. They had an injury even before the game, had an injury during the game in their secondary, so they're kind of like patchworking the secondary together. But the other part, and the one thing I will say about the Florida Gators is I honestly think they're going to be the throw the ball on most people. Graham Mertz has been successful throwing the football in every game this year, except maybe the Georgia game, maybe early against Utah. But he now holds the Gator record for most passes attempted without interception. And that's a guy that preseason everyone thought he's the bottom rung of the SEC. He's 24 yards, he's got touchdowns, he's only thrown 2 picks. One of them was tipped by Ricky Pearsall. So that's a guy that's playing very, very efficient football. And I think that it's his command of the offense, his ability to find guys. You mentioned the sacks, taking the 4 sacks. Some of that's on the offensive side, some of that's on Graham. I think he is scared to give the ball away at times, and so he holds on to it too long. And I think that's kind of an issue. Like, you got to be able to throw the ball away some a little bit more, right? I think you can avoid some of those sacks, avoid some of those negative situations. Because if you don't take that sack, right, in Arkansas, and you're able to get that ball out of the back of the end zone, you probably win that game. So, that's a phenomenal question. LSU obviously has some issues in secondary moving forward, and they'll continue to struggle there through the year. But I think it's kind of it was a Florida strength versus an LSU weakness, and the Gators did a good job of exploiting it.
Do we think LSU has the top offense in the nation?
I think that LSU has the best quarterback in the nation. I was a big Penix guy, Michael Penix Jr. out there in Washington, who I think is a phenomenal football player. Probably going to be the first quarterback. Well, I don't know. We'll see. He should be, in my opinion, the first quarterback of the draft. But I just think Daniels is that good. He has great command of his offense. He's an incredible athlete. He makes plays you don't think he should. And then when you look at his arm, I mean, he's just an accurate dude. He puts him in the air. He throws it downfield. He has phenomenal receivers. A guy like Malik Neighbors, and then those guys and company. So I just think he's him. Honestly, I do think LSU's offense is overall pretty decent, but I think Daniels is the straw that mixes that drink.
That's fair. I didn't really have any other final thoughts except Florida falls to 5-5, and you were pretty open about this is probably where you saw the Gators being, and anywhere between 5 and 7 wins. Any thoughts going the last 2 games, whether the expectations are going to be? You already said probably not win either one of them, but is that probably what the fan base is thinking, or is that just kind of a Jarad thought?
I think that's probably a me thought. Your fan base is expecting to at least be able to figure out how to win one of those and get to a bowl game and show some improvement over that year one. I mean, you want to take a step back in year 2 from year 1. I just don't think that's a realistic thought. Just to be honest with you, I'm not trying to come down here on Gator Nation's hopes and dreams, but I think the fan base is the attitude of the fan base is very tumultuous at the point, right? It's not a fun place to be. A Gator fan online on the message boards and on the Twitter app or the X app. Sorry, Elon. But it's not a fun place to be. There's a lot of negativity, a lot of bad feelings going around. And the Gator Nation is a very vocal place. It's not for the faint of heart. So you better be, willing to kind of, take that in stride. So I think the noise is very loud for Billy Napier here in year 2. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he's locked in for 2 more years no matter what happens in these last 2 games. And I think Gator fans really don't want to hear that. But that's just my opinion. I don't know where I fall on it, to be honest with you, Brandon. I think I can see enough of the external factors that have, caused a lot of the issues this year to say, I'm interested in seeing what happens next year. Mm-hmm. I'm not outright as hey, let's move on already. But, those conversations are going to be had, and even louder. Next year's schedule, as everyone knows, is brutal. Yeah. If you can't find 6 wins on this year's schedule, I don't know how you're going to find them on next year's, just to be completely honest. Unless you hit some home runs in the portal, which in the world of college football, very possible.
Indeed. Well, thanks for the recap there. I didn't have any other follow-up questions. I did, since we have Brooke on the show today, want to transition to another team that's 5-5 on the year, and that'd be the UCF Knights. Brooke, you were at this game. You've seen the Knights suffer through a 5-game lose streak, and then they came out swinging against the Cowboys. Tell me what you saw from the game, weather-wise, and from the players.
Yeah, so as a Knight fan my entire life, I'm just so excited to be in the Big 12. I'm so excited to see the team progress to where it is now. I mean, I grew up going to games where there were 10 people in the stands, and we were playing Marshall. So, it's definitely a bigger change, and we're really enjoying it. It's been nice to see the different fan bases that have come to Orlando too. Even though we lost, Baylor and West Virginia showing up strong, all of their fans were super enjoyable to be around and super nice with their wins. And then Oklahoma State comes to town, and we're coming off of a tough win with Cincinnati. We fought really hard up in Cincy and ended up pulling out the win to snap the streak, which it seems that a streak is always snapped when we play Cincinnati, whether it's ours or theirs. But coming off of that win, I could feel the difference in the team. You could see it online. The social media was all different. Kind of like Gator Nation, Knight Nation is also very vocal. They've gotten a little excited with everything that's happened over the past couple of years. Sometimes I think they need to rethink it and calm down a little bit and remember where we came from. But it definitely showed a little bit this season, going on a 5-loss streak. It was tough. And it did hurt the players a little bit, but when they were able to get that win in Cincinnati, I think it just snapped them back. And then coming home, first game at home, really our first real Big 12 game, I would say. Because we've played, it was our first Big 12 win, I should say. But we've played Cincinnati, so to get that win, it was good, but we've played them before, we've been conference foes for a while, but to have that first real Big 12 team win was just awesome. And then to do it in such a wonderful and smashing way. I mean, I never would have thought going into that game on Saturday, we would have won 45-3. I didn't even know if we were going to score 45 points. So to do that was just awesome. The game atmosphere was insane. It was a sold out crowd. You could feel the vibes in the air just walking into the stadium. Everyone was ready for a win. It was our space game, so everyone was excited because the space game, comes new uniforms, new music in the stadium. We also just got new LED lights in the stadium, so it was amazing to see just the changes that happened. And then we were all a little worried, Oklahoma State's coming in at number 15. They just beat Oklahoma. Even though we had a close game with Oklahoma too, you never know. And with our 5-5 season that we have now, I would have not expected us to go 45-3. But then it happened. I mean, we were competing against a Heisman candidate running back who we held to, I believe, about 25 yards. And to hold him to 25 yards was insane. Especially because our rush defense hasn't been the best over the season. So that was very interesting to see. That was one of my biggest worries going into the game was the rush defense. But they shut Ollie Gordon down, and that was really awesome. I was also worried too because during the game it started pouring, as it does in the state of Florida. But it was pouring down rain, which typically when it starts to rain, teams will start to run the ball even more. So I was like, okay, their passing isn't working. Maybe they're going to start running the ball more. And they did. But what happened is every time Oklahoma State would get a drive started, something would happen, whether it was an interception or a fumble or a major tackle, stuff like that. So it was anytime they got something going, they were immediately shut down, which was awesome to see. I mean, they would get down to the red zone and then all of a sudden there'd be an interception and we'd run the ball back. Our running back, RJ Harvey, I got the pleasure of watching him in high school because I was at his rival high school at the time. And so to see him in his years at UCF grow and really shine, I believe that if our wins were a little different this year, if we had a few more wins on the table, I think that he would be considered could be considered a Heisman candidate just by his stats, or at least close, because he has very similar statistics to Ollie Gordon going into this game as well. So I think if we had a few more wins, he'd be more respected, and I think he does deserve more of that respect to his name. In this game, he ran for about 200 yards, and one of those was a 92-yard touchdown. So it was just the vibes were electric. It was just a great game all around. This was one of our most healthiest games for our players. We saw most of our starters on the field. Defensively, our defense is what keeps us in games most of the time. And they definitely did that with this game, forcing the fumble and the 3 interceptions. Our sophomore, Damari Henderson, having 2 interceptions on the game and recovering the fumble. It was just amazing to see that as well, to see some of our younger players start to stand out, and to see what our future might look like. So overall, it was a really great game. Glad that was our first official, real Big 12 win. And to be able to storm the field afterwards was pretty awesome. So
nice. Yeah, they just put it on them. Jarad, let me ask you, because we're both from the Texas Oklahoma area. Bedlam ends last time Oklahoma State plays Oklahoma, and then you've made a comment that Mike Gundy does these kinds of things where he will just lose some head scratchers, and I think we both agree he just can't win when it matters. Tell me why that is, or why that trend continues.
Man, here's the thing. No one in the world can out Mike Gundy, not even Gus Malzahn. And I've been really vocal about Gus's weird decisions, throughout the years and kind of strange things he's done. But the king of just being able to be completely mediocre at everything they do when it comes to coaching a football game is Mike Gundy. He's undefeated at it. He sits on a throne at the top of a mountain all by himself. He's just a guy that will have these weird surprise wins, these weird surprise stretches, and then he reminds you that, like, oh wait, I'm not that great at what I do. I just beat up on a lot of bad teams. But if you're UCF, man, hats off. Brooke mentioned the run game, phenomenal job at just really kind of bottling up Oklahoma State. I won't expand on anything Brooke said. She said it perfectly. But Mike Gundy was just classic Mike Gundy there, and I was here for all of it. I don't know if you remember, Brandon, but I called the streak. I was just a week early, right? So I called the UCF win streak. I was just a week early with that West Virginia loss, but it should have been a win. Because here's the thing, man, if you're going to get on track in your season, which the Knights have done, in my opinion, but if you're going to get on track, the best thing to do is go play Emory Jones, go play against Emory Jones at the quarterback position, and then turn around and go play Mike Gundy. And those 2 things will remedy anyone's losing streak, I promise. But yeah, no, phenomenal job there by the Knights. Hats off. They played a heck of a game. It was fun to watch, even, just on the TV. So I can't imagine. I bet the atmosphere was crazy. I don't know much about the space game. In fact, I was going to ask Brooke about that, if she could kind of elaborate on that, because I really don't know much about that.
Yeah, so our space game, this was the 7th year of it. And every year we pay tribute to our connection to space. I know most people don't know this, but our 50-yard line actually lines up directly with the launch pad at NASA. So if you ever get to see a launch from the stadium, which we have been blessed to do twice now, it's really, really cool because you can see the whole thing and it just lights up right behind the 50-yard line. But when UCF was originally founded, we were founded as Florida Technological University, which was basically created to create people to work at NASA and to work in those technological fields. So we've had a connection to NASA for a very long time. A lot of our alumni work at NASA as well. And every year we have our space game in football. We started doing it, I believe, like 2 or 3 years ago in all the other sports as well. So for baseball, we did Citronaut Saturdays, where every Saturday they threw it back to the Citronaut, which was our mascot when we were at FTU. And so our Citronaut he's a little orange, and then he's an astronaut. So he has the body of an orange and then an astronaut head. So we throw back uniforms and things like that. And usually our uniforms are very specific as to what they represent. So this year we went with the Canaveral blue color. So a lot of people were confused because they thought UNC was on their screens, but it wasn't. It was us. And we went with the Canaveral blue color. We did all of our promo shooting at Cape Canaveral on the beach, which I think goes into helping our recruiting too, because we literally are the school where people vacation, whether you're going to the beach or you're going to Disney or anything like that. Like it just helps. And they played all kinds of space music. Like they played like Rocket Man. and things like that to just completely change over the atmosphere. On the field, they painted, the sidelines were blue as well. And we become the knots for the night. So instead of the Knights, we become the knots for the day. And everything. Our marching band gets in on it. They last year they did Star Wars for halftime. This year they did Star Trek. So it's really nice to just pay tribute to our space backgrounds, as well as just honoring something that's part of Orlando and part of the university too. And we're 7-0 in space games, so maybe it's just the space game trick. But if every game was a space game, would we win? I don't know. We'll see.
I was going to ask that because I thought they were undefeated. Go ahead, Jared.
If you schedule Mike Gundy for the space game every year, you will never lose.
And just a couple of quick thoughts on the game, and Brooke touched on this pretty well. The defense, they have a different strategy, in my opinion, of just let's attack, let's wreak havoc, and they were +3 in the turnovers against the Cowboys, and Morris Brash and the other guys in the secondary have really kind of come on, and there have been games where maybe their efforts have gotten lost, but Morris Brash has been one of the best defensive players in the conference this year, and it kind of gets faded away when you saw the 5-game lose streak with UCF, but it's still there, and they still have some talent on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of that has been hidden because, like you mentioned, because of that 5-game losing streak. But if you look at the statistics going into these games, we're pretty even with each team that we lost to. When we lost to Kansas, I don't know what happened there. That was just whatever it was. But with Kansas State, we were pretty even the entire game, and then we just lost it in the fourth. Same thing with Baylor. I mean, we gave up a 35-point lead. Again, don't know what happened there. But going into the game, our stats were the same. Same thing with West Virginia, similar stats, same type of gameplay. It's just where we lose it. And like I mentioned earlier, this was the first game where most of our starters were back to full health. Even against Cincinnati, our quarterback, JRP, he was not fully healthy, and you could see that when he would try to throw off the back leg or when he would run. He didn't rush the ball as much as he normally would. And so I think that is why the score was so close in that game. But against Oklahoma State, you truly got to see a pretty fully healthy UCF team, which was really nice because we haven't really experienced that all season. And I think that did help in our 45-3 win.
I would think Florida State, you'll talk about in a second, are going the other way, or they're just trying to stay healthy the rest of the year. What are the Gators doing? Are they kind of full strength at 80%? How are they health-wise?
Not good.
Okay.
Not good at all. Shamar James is probably done for the year. Jack Pyburn's done for the year. Devin Moore, I don't know if we'll see him again. It's a big-time piece of the defensive back position. Even before the season, you had strong side defensive end. I don't know why his name escapes me. That's crazy. But he tore his ACL in camp. So also, I believe you're still out. Caleb Douglas, I don't believe is available for Missouri, wide receiver there, who really is wide receiver number 2 at UF. Wilson's emergence has really came at Douglas kind of just being out, with Pearsall there. So and Wilson would have got the ball even if Douglas was there. But Andy Jean, I believe, is still unavailable. So a lot of pieces still missing for Florida, and so we'll see them patchwork together the rest of the way.
All right. Very good. Any final thoughts on the Gators or the Knights, or I could just do a quick Florida State Miami recap?
Yeah, let's move it on. Let's see what happens.
All right, cool.
Do it.
So the Noles win. They win 27-20 at home, and probably a lot. I'm not sure if I covered this enough. Maybe Jared, you can remember, but we knew Miami would be a pretty good team. I think this was a game where we never got a huge lead. We had to hold on defense at the end of the game. We make a pretty big defensive mistake to allow a late touchdown for Miami, which kept it within 7 points. But, Miami is a skilled squad. They have some athletes. They just can't quite seem to put it together. Brooke, remind me, the center that transferred from UCF to Miami, is it Lee? Is that right?
Yes, Matt Lee.
Probably the best center in the ACC, to be honest. You could probably argue that. Florida State's offensive line is about average, better than average. And, we got some decent pressure because Van Dyke is just kind of a statue back there. I think he's like one of the least likely scramblers in all of the country. And then he gets hurt, and he's taken out because, I don't know, was he inefficient? Who got hurt? Who knows? Then the backup Williams gets hurt late in the game, compound fracture in his arm. He had a card off the field. It was a pretty nasty injury. Well, then Van Dyke comes in to orchestrate the drive to tie the game, and he was ineffective and didn't get it done. So, the Noles had some funky plays in this game. I've watched the replay on the non-safety call where Travis drops out of the backfield and runs around out of pressure. I'm a Nole fan, so I'm just going to say whatever the refs say goes, but that was a safety. That would have made the game 10-9, and Miami gets the ball back and plus territory. I don't think that makes a difference on who wins. I don't honestly think that. But there were just a few small things like that. Benson gets loose for a rush, and he steps out like the 45. Otherwise, he's gone for a touchdown there. The last touchdown that Miami scored, the long, I think it was like 85-yard receiving touchdown, 2 defenders, like both of them either were going to light this guy up or they were going to intercept the ball, and somehow it goes right through both of them, and he's free and he's not covered down the field. So you get some really funky things that happen in this one. Otherwise, it might have gone 4-6 way a little bit sooner. I was lucky enough to go to the game. It was a very good atmosphere. I know I like to pick fun at Miami, but they just didn't travel very well this time. I've been to other Miami games, and there's usually more fans there.
What game have you been to when Miami travels?
Oh, my Lord. Well, back when they were decent, they have Mark Richt. They sometimes would kind of show up in Tallahassee, but
is that like a difference between like 10 people and like 100, or like
essentially, yeah, it's not.
Okay.
Surprisingly, they show up pretty well when they have bowl games in Orlando, but I think it's because most of them live here.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Yeah,
yep.
I like that one.
Very, very true. So the Noles improved to 10-0. This was I feel like this was the year, I was telling Brooke this earlier, the Noles are kind of exercising some demons. Get past Clemson, get past Miami. Both of those games, me personally, I was like, just win at all costs. I don't care how it looks. I don't care if it's not pretty. And neither one of those games were a convincing win. I won't say that by any stretch. But you had Johnny Wilson back. You had Keon Coleman back. You saw what they looked like without those two guys at Pittsburgh. And you'll probably see what they look like again this week against North Alabama. It's a totally different look, a totally different feel. And it's kind of worrisome, as I was just saying about injuries. When you don't have those two guys and you have to rely on some other skills, that it just looks very different. So, yeah, pretty convincing win. Did y'all have any thoughts on how this game shook out or how the Noles have gotten to 10-0?
I'll probably disagree with you a little bit, Brandon, in that you mentioned, like, we've seen that Miami, is a talented team or has played good. I don't actually think they're that great. I mean, I'm not knocking the win or anything. It's just that, like, I was the Miami guy on this podcast for 6 weeks, hyping their wins and hyping their team and saying, man, this team looks good. And then I watched them just basically fall back down to earth. And I thought this was a game where you could tell that this team got up for this matchup, right? This team was like, our season banks on winning this road game. And I thought Florida State did a great job of weathering that sort of like momentum. One thing about college football, while we still have it in its, semblance of what we've had in the yesteryear, is that we have these momentum moments, right? And if you're a college football fan, you've seen them. And if you followed your team for a long, you've seen these moments where, you can do the unexpected and you can pull off the upset and all was right in Whoville for at least a week. And this was that game that Miami really wanted. Like, Emory Williams came in and almost saved the day, right? And it was kind of that moment. But Florida State did a great job of weathering that. I'm still not high on Miami. I don't think they do anything from here on. I think they got up for this week, and now you'll see them like there's nothing left to play for type mentality. I don't think Cristobal's a good game manager. They'll flip some recruits from like Western Kentucky or something. I don't know. I'm just not. But, so I that's the only part I would disagree with you on. The question I would have for you, though, Brandon, is going into this game, it kind of felt like you're 10-0 now. Do you see a scenario where undefeated Florida State doesn't make the playoff?
That's a great question. And in fact, I'm going to answer it by deferring to Brooke because her and I were talking about this just the other night. So, Brooke, give me what's your take, which I think is pretty fair, on what you have seen from the Noles, number 4 in the country, undefeated, but who they've played and kind of where they stand and what you think will happen in the playoff, because I think we agree on this.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm still not sold on the whole undefeated Nole thing. I was lucky enough to go to 2 games this season at Doak, and they should have been easy blowout wins. I should have been bored at the game. And surprisingly, I was very intrigued because there were times when I was like, oh, Florida State might lose this one. Who knows? And then they'd pull it out and score like 3 more touchdowns in the end. So, I haven't been fully impressed. I've seen Norvell coach for a while now. And I've definitely seen a change in his coaching, but he's not a flashy coach. He just doesn't play a flashy game. He doesn't have flashy players unless they're running backs. If it's a running back, they're going to be flashy. But other than that, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about Jordan Travis with the Heisman. And yes, he's a great player and he's a great human and he's a great leader on the team. But I just don't think he has the pizzazz to get to the level to be a Heisman candidate. Even though he's 10-0, he's very injury prone. He hasn't had the best years in the past at Florida State. He's brought them back from, down in the dumps, but still he doesn't just show everything that I need out of a Heisman candidate. And I think he's great. Don't get me wrong. And I think the 10-0 Noles are awesome, but there have been a lot of close games this season that I just don't know if something would have changed, would it have gone their way? For instance, when they played Duke, if Duke's QB did not go out in that game, I don't know that Florida State would have won that game. It was very close. The Blue Devils were on a roll, and I don't think that would have been a win for Florida State. Same thing with Miami. I mean, you mentioned when their secondary went out, I just don't see if he would have continued in the game and they wouldn't have had to bring back in Van Dyke. I don't know that Florida State would have pulled that one out, even though it is at home. It is Miami, they don't always show up the best, but it was a very close game that we were watching. So I'm not completely sold. I don't know that the CFP will be sold either. But that's just my take. They've got to prove a little bit more to me in these upcoming weeks. And I know they have a hopefully easy win this weekend, but I don't know if I take them against the Gators just as a mental game. I know many Gator fans will disagree on me. Yeah, I know. But it's such a mental game that I don't know. Like, if Travis gets injured, what happens? Can Rodemaker catch up with that? I don't know, and Travis, like I said, he's very injury prone. The wide receivers are injury prone right now. So if one thing goes wrong, they have to sell me in that week, I'll say.
And to further on that thought, Jarad, if you take, let's hypothetically say Texas wins the Big 12 with a loss, Alabama wins the SEC with a loss, and Oregon wins the Pac-12 with a loss, I have a hard time saying Florida State's any better than any of those 3 teams, just to be completely honest.
Well, no, and I don't. I think we both said it really well. I guess my question here, or my thought process is here, is like, you're going to take the winner of Ohio State and Michigan, right? Assuming they go on to win the Big Ten.
Right.
So that team is probably in. Washington and Oregon are very intriguing to me. I'm higher on Washington than I think most people are. I just think that's a really good team. I just think they're phenomenal. I just really enjoy watching them. But if they line it up against Florida State, I mean, I think they score a lot of points on Florida State, but I think Florida State scores a lot of points on them too. So to me, that game is kind of a toss-up. I don't really know. I look at them head to head. I think Washington has the better win in Oregon because I think Oregon beats Clemson or Miami. But and then the other piece of that, of course, is Texas. But then that doesn't even factor in is like, do Alabama and Georgia both make it? Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC, Georgia's undefeated. Or do you leave the 2-time defending champs out? I don't know. I feel like we're shaping up for one of the more wild finishes, like complete chaos here, and what happens in the hands of the CFP, and this is a scenario that a lot of fans are kind of here for, to see what happens. But I don't know, Brandon. Who are your 4 right now?
Right now, that's a good question. Georgia, man. The struggle I'm having here, Jarad, is you can't. Well, maybe this is a question for both of you. You can't take Ohio State and Michigan, can you?
Can you?
I mean, How much do you value a conference championship is really the question there, because one of them's going to finish 11-1. Are they better than the winner of the Pac-12? Who knows? Yeah, give me Georgia, because I think they still do win the SEC. I don't think you get the chaos there, just honestly.
Yeah.
Give me Oregon to leapfrog and beat Washington in the rematch. Give me Ohio State. I would put the Noles in there. I would. I guess you're going to have to really focus, and just your selling point when you pitch it to the committee is look at the LSU win. Duke did end up being quite a good win, but Clemson may come on strong, and they beat Notre Dame, so there's something there. This is assuming Florida State finishes undefeated, and I'm guessing they're going to play Louisville. We'll know this weekend for sure. You can kind of maybe point to beating the Gators in the Swamp if that ends up happening. But that's really just hey, we beat 2 SEC teams. It's kind of the only thing there. I don't feel great about it, but that's what I'd pick.
Brooke, where are you at? Who are you for right now?
Like I said, the Noles haven't really sold me, so until the end of the season, I can't put them in number 4. But I think when it comes down to, Oregon and Washington and Ohio State and Michigan, you got to go to Old Faithful and go strength of schedule. So I would put in, the higher strength of schedule, because that's what they've been pulling from in years past. And that's where I would go with that. But I'd definitely put in Georgia, as long as they win out, win the title, whatever. But I'd say I'd probably put in both Ohio State and Michigan.
Ooh.
And then I've been rooting for Washington all season. So, I'd probably throw them in there too.
No, that's fair. The other question I have, Brandon, on that. So the Noles say they beat Louisville. To me, that's a pretty marquee win. Louisville's a pretty good team, right? They've had some big wins. And I guess, do you feel that maybe a fan like me has maybe drank the Pac-12 Kool-Aid? Like maybe I'm overvaluing the Pac-12. Do you feel like that's potential, like some thoughts out there? Like, where do you value the Pac-12 right now?
So I think, just to be honest, was it 2016 that Washington went to the playoff and laid an egg? Was that like 5 or 6 years ago? I don't know. That's left people's memory. And then you also had Michigan State with that really good season. Was it Connor Cook or whoever? They go and lay an egg. So I think, as much as we love to separate politics and sports, the playoff committee has to make a business decision here. And I think they're very hesitant to put in a non-brand name team and school for fear of what's already happened. Like TCU went in, they beat Michigan, and they got humiliated by Georgia. Washington goes in and loses. Michigan State went in and lost. The ACC has a little bit of favor, but it hasn't been from Florida State's side. And when we went to the playoff 8 years ago, whenever it was, we got embarrassed by Oregon. But Clemson was the one carrying the flag, right? And so I think because of that, Florida State has a better shot to get in.
That's a great. Could we see a potential first-round rematch of Oregon and Florida State?
Somebody sent me that today, and I couldn't believe it. They said it is a very small possibility that the very first 4 playoff teams in 2014 could be the same 4 again this year. Do you remember who they were?
I'm assuming, I'm just off the top. Well, Oklahoma was in the playoff then, I think. But I don't think
the first year was 2014. That was
2014. So Oregon, Florida State, Alabama.
Yep. And Ohio State.
Ohio State,
who won it all.
Yeah, Urban Meyer, right?
Yep.
So, very interesting.
Yeah, the 4 seed won the very first playoff. Everybody likes to forget that. So, very, very intense next 2 weeks to decide who actually goes there and see how that shakes out. It's going to be crazy. Everybody's going to be like, this is why we want 12. And I'm like, no, this is actually why you want 4.
This is why you want 4?
Yes.
Yeah. This is exactly why you want 4.
Mm-hmm.
This is why you want to bring back the BCS.
Oh, yes, please. 1 versus 2. Awesome. Okay, well, that recaps that last week. We're going to go ahead and look forward a little bit. Jarad, the Gators are going to play the Missouri Tigers. You mentioned earlier Missouri's just having a great season. What are your thoughts on how this game plays out?
I'm going to keep this short and sweet here on this precap, and I think obviously I don't want to let Chris down on his week off here, but This is going to be a good game if you're a Florida fan. It's not going to be fun to watch. It's not going to be exciting. It's not going to be anything great. I think Florida might be able to play a little bit of ball control, keep the ball away from Mizzou a little bit, and, maybe keep it close for a half. I just think that Missouri, we've watched them play this whole year, right? I mean, that's a great team, and they're having a great season.
Yeah.
And they're loaded. They look good. They're dialed in. They're locked in. It should be a pretty big. My prediction ability has been terrible all the way through the season. Maybe like the worst season of on record predictions of all time.
I doubt it.
It's been real bad. But this is probably like a 30. It's probably like a 34-13 game. I think. I just don't see any way for the Gators to get this win on the road. This is how I see it.
Okay. Any goals you hope that Florida accomplishes here other than keeping it close? And you got to remind me, is it in Gainesville or is it on the road?
This is on the road, right? It's Columbia, Missouri. And I've actually been to a game there. We won the week before Will Greer got busted, and then Treon Harris had to take over, and that season turned into
forgot about that.
I was actually at the game, though, in Columbia, sitting on the 50-yard line with a bunch of cool Mizzou fans. It was a really fun experience. We won that game. Tabor maybe picks it off at the end of the game. So anyway, neither here nor there. That's not happening this year. So no, it's. I think for me, I just want to continue to see the evolution of that offense. Can Graham Mertz continue to play efficient football? Can he continue to get the hands in the young and get the ball in the hands of playmakers like Ricky Pearsall and obviously Trey Wilson as he continues his bid? I would like to see Ricky hit 1,000 yards on the year. He's really close, so that would be kind of fun to see. And then obviously, can this offensive line figure out something with communication? You're going to have to continue to rely on him. He's going to continue to be a liability. So how can we scheme around that? We saw a little bit of it at LSU, kind of switching it up between zone schemes and pulling guards and things like that. It was really, they did a lot more of that against Louisiana State. They should be able to do it here too. And then the other thing is the adventure of the defense that doesn't exist, where do you go for answers? What sort of things is Armstrong trying to tweak to kind of figure out? Maybe you revamp and just kind of start the youth movement even more, right? You just take everybody out and say, all right, well, here's where we're at. We're just going to start getting these young guys more time. Because if they're going to score every time, you might as well let them score on, somebody else. So, yeah, that's really kind of all I'm looking forward to. Of course, I'm going to watch the game and be dialed in, right, supporting the team. Yep. But we'll see. Well, I just think that these last 2 weeks are going to be weeks that Gator fans are going to have to kind of just get through and see what happens here in the offseason.
All right, very good. I'm going to take Missouri to win here. If things fall the right way for Missouri, they may end up in a New Year's Six bowl. They've really impressed this year, and whether it's how they beat Kansas State or how they beat Tennessee, I mean, I've just week after week they played really well. I never really judge a team on close losses, so I'm not going to be a guy that they played Georgia well. Yeah, so does South Carolina. Who cares? But who did they beat? And there's pretty marquee wins there.
Yep, agreed.
All right, Brooke, we'll defer to you. UCF is going on the road to Lubbock, which is the home of Texas Tech University. They've got wild foxes running around, wild possums on the field. What do you expect in this game, and how does it shake out?
Well, I'm hoping nothing wild runs across the field except for RJ Harvey. Nice. Because if some animal runs, I think that's a loss for us because that's statistically what they've been doing. But I think that I don't know a lot about Texas Tech. Getting to know all these new Big 12 opponents has been a little bit of an adjustment. You ask me anything about Memphis or Cincinnati, I got you. But all these new Texas people, because there's like 7 teams in Texas that we play, they're taking a little bit to get to know. So I'm very intrigued to see how this game goes. Texas Tech has had a very interesting season. They were kind of one of those teams that at the beginning of the season I wasn't too worried about because you don't really hear a lot about them. But then in the past couple of weeks, they started to shine. I mean, they had some very interesting wins that I didn't think were wins for them, and then here they are. So, I mean, we're both coming in at 5-5, so that's a good sign. But they did beat Kansas, who blew us out of the water. So there's always that. And but they did lose to Kansas State just like we did in a pretty close game as well. So I think we're a pretty evenly matched up team. I think we have a good shot. It does worry me a little bit that we are on the road, just because we seem to not play as well on the road like every other team. We don't have our hometown environment there. But I do think that if our team stays healthy like they did this past week, I think we have a pretty good chance. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, as most Big 12 games are. I think it's going to be high-scoring on both sides this time, unlike last week. But I would say it's probably like a 42-35 game if both sides play like I think they will. And I always take UCF. I'll still always take UCF, especially when both teams are coming in 5-5. I think we got a pretty good shot. And I think we're on a high right now coming off of this past week. And I think we have our eyes focused in, though, on being on that high. And I don't think we're going to have the win hangover that most teams have, that kind of Oklahoma State came in with last week. So I think we'll have a good focus. I think we're ready to be bowl eligible and bring back a win before senior night in a few weeks. So,
okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, this is a win. It's a win all the way for UCF. Obviously, traveling into the absolute worst cesspool town in the entire state of Texas, and obviously, I can speak on that as I grew up in the Texas Panhandle, born and raised in the 806. I can tell you that Lubbock, Texas, is just an absolute trash fire of a place. Nothing there. There's nothing fun there. There's nothing that looks cool there. There's some great Mexican food. But there's that. You can find that anywhere in the Texas Panhandle. You don't need to go to Lubbock for that. It's dirty. It's grimy. There's a bunch of people who don't know anything about football. So this is a win for UCF. I don't even know. Like, somebody could have been like, "Oh, Texas Tech is 5-5," and I would have been like, okay. They could be like 9-1. They could be, whatever. Like, they're not winning this game. I don't see it. Even if I did see it, I wouldn't see it. I would just tell you I didn't see it. I have nothing good to say about this town or this team. Their colors are boring. Their stadium is just ugly. Their campus is giant for no reason because no one's excited about it. And you mentioned the home field environment. Okay, yeah, Texas Tech's playing at home. Cool, they're gonna throw tortillas at you. Nobody cares.
Do that.
It's not loud. It's not fun. There's no history. That's pretty much all I gotta say.
I was gonna add on. You mentioned earlier, Mike Leach. When he took over the job there, you're no coaching experience, just started winning, and that's we were talking about this before the show started for the fans listening, and I was like, yeah, that's really the only claim they have, right? There's the Cliff Kingsbury thing, and there's some other blips on the radar. But to this season, Texas Tech did lose to Wyoming, okay? And then they did win last week, but in a surprisingly low-scoring game, 16-13, I believe, was the final. You don't see that very often, so that's just kind of is that an anomaly? Will you see a low scoring again? I think I agree with Brooke. I think that was just kind of a one-off. You just, in the Big 12, you're not going to see performances like that on a regular basis. So I know they were pretty good at running the ball for a while, was Texas Tech, but I hadn't really watched enough of them to know kind of what their strengths and weaknesses are. But yeah, give me the Knights in this one.
Yeah, I don't really spend a lot of time putting them on my television. But no, look, they, Mike Leach did have a great run there, and he made them likable. But they also hired Tommy Tuberville. Who does that?
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So come on. No, this is another win for the Knights. I like the Knights. I'm not going to predict. I don't want to do that to the Knights. I don't want to predict. You don't want me predicting.
Don't put that curse on Ricky Bobby.
I would never do it. But yeah, so yeah, I'm out on the prediction game. But yeah, Tech's ugly.
Got it.
Yep.
I'm going to spend exactly about 30 seconds on Florida State, North Alabama. North Alabama Lions, I believe they're in Florence, Mississippi. They're a Division II team, but they're also like a 3-win Division II team. And so this is not going to be a competitive game at all. Florida State probably rests most of their starters. I don't think you want to rest like a Jordan Travis. This is his last game at Doak, so you want to get there. Jameis Winston's number 5 jersey is going to be retired this game, so that's another reason for the fans to get excited. But when this game is over in the second quarter, there's not going to be a whole lot of reason to hang around, and it's not going to be a sellout, and just get a lot of freshmen and some reps and get your starters healthy. The offensive line really needs a rest, so this would be a good chance for that. But this is probably like a 56-3 55-7, something like that, it's not going to be competitive.
Yeah, your third string quarterback's going to finish this game, so yeah. I think it's going to be just get in, get out, get what you need to, and get some reps.
Yep. Now, there is a tie. Oh, see, look at this. I'm giving him 2 minutes. This is way more than North Alabama deserves. Terry Bowden used to coach the North Alabama Lions. He coached there for about 3 years. So there's a Florida State connection to this school. There you go. Okay. That's all I got for you.
Shout out Terry B.
Yeah. Jeff Bowden was his offensive coordinator. We won't go off on that tangent.
Of course he was.
Good gracious. I'm going to put Brooke on the spot here a little bit because she's been a theme on this show for some time. So we're going to backtrack to UCF's homecoming. You were honored enough to be on the homecoming court. Tell us about the experience that week and what it was like to be on the field.
Yeah, so it was such an honor to be on the homecoming court and to represent a university that I've loved for my entire life. For our listeners, I am a legacy student at UCF, so to be able to represent a university that really built me as my dream school. It was the only school I applied to, all of that, those stories that you hear, that was me. So to be able to honor the university in that way and to represent was really special to me. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity that I had. The week was crazy. It put me back in high school where I was at school from like 7 a.m. to midnight every day. Definitely learned that I don't have the stamina to do that anymore as a college student now, because that was a long week. But it was a really fun week. I got to engage with so many students on campus. And I've been an orientation leader at UCF for 2 years now. And so I've seen over 28,000 students come in and out or into the university. And I probably saw at least 2,000 of them over that week. And to see the impact that I've made on the university and the impact that some of my friends have had, it was just a really awesome experience. A week full of activities. We had comedy night with Chico Bean. We had Rico Nasty for concert night. We had a Nice Got Talent show where students could showcase their talents that they have to other students. And we have our best tradition, actually voted the best homecoming tradition in 2017 by ESPN, Spirit Splash to wrap up the week right before the football game. So that's a tradition where all of the students will run into the reflection pond on campus, and we have a big pep rally, and we throw rubber duckies at college kids. So if it's the most ridiculous thing you'll ever see in your life, but it is also the best thing to ever do. So my first 2 years at UCF, I ran into the pond both years. And this year I had the opportunity with homecoming court to throw ducks into the pond. So that was really awesome. And we even got to do some, things in our community. We have a school on property that is for students or for children of students, faculty, and staff at the university. And it's called the Creative School. And we got to host a mini Spirit Splash with those kids over there. So we had this big bubble pit, and we threw ducks in the pit, and they had to go search for them. So even though, we were doing stuff at the university, we still got to see, we got to help out our community and have a little fun with the kids across the street. So that was really awesome. And it's things that you don't think relate to, the homecoming week. And then you do an event like that and you're like, wow, I'm really happy to be here. Just to show the love for my school and to see other people who loved the school in the same way. And then going on to the football game, it was actually the second year in a row that I've been on the football field on homecoming. Which was kind of funny because last year one of my organizations that I'm a part of was honored as organization of the game at our homecoming game. And then this year I got to go on for the crowning ceremony. And it was awesome because we go on right after alumni band. So you get to watch the alumni band on the field and get to see all of them. So happy to be there. And then you trade spots with them. And I got to walk out with one of my closest friends from one of our organizations that we're a part of together, and we got to do the journey together. And then he ended up winning homecoming royalty. So to see him win and to be just there to support him, he had no clue it was going to happen. and he couldn't even move to go accept his crown. So that was just an amazing experience. And then to just be on the field, I was sad I missed most of the game, but I was watching it on my phone the whole time because I can't miss a UCF game at all. But it was great when we finally got to the stands. I know it's probably my fault we didn't win because I'm superstitious and I didn't have my jersey on. I had on my dress, all those things. So I apologize to Night Nation. But it was definitely an experience that I am super grateful for. And yeah, it was just an awesome experience.
That's great. Well, you can think of it this way: UCF hasn't lost since that game. So I mean, that's not
right, because I've been wearing my jersey every game.
There you go.
We figured it out.
Hey, we're back.
You were talking about your involvement in the university. So Jarad and I are both fans of schools that have existed since the 1850s, and FTU/UCF is very, very new. Tell me about how young their alumni base is.
Yeah, so we're actually the youngest alumni base in the Big 12, and most of our alumni base age range is in their 30s and 40s. So we're super young. We even have young alumni events that we have put on to try to keep our alumni engaged as soon as they're out of the university so that we can keep them in those longer years too. But yeah, like you mentioned, our university has only been open for 60 years, whereas there's other universities that were created in the 1800s. So we're very young. We're proud of where we are, and having such a young alumni base is how we can keep our fans engaged and keep our donor numbers up and things like that too. And it's also where I think some of the fan base has come in the past couple years. You have people who graduated in 2013 and got to see Blake Bortles and the team go on and beat Baylor in the Fiesta Bowl, and you have people who graduated in 2017 who got to see Mackenzie Milton take the team to the Peach Bowl and things like that. So you have the people who understand the newfound love of football that the university has. But then you also do have the older alumni who have seen the university grow. And now they're starting to have their students or their kids become students at the university too. So you have more of those hometown kids who are staying back at the university. We're one of the largest universities in the nation, housing about 70,000 students every year. And that number just continues to grow. And our acceptance grades and things like that. I mean, I did an admissions workshop the other day, and just the change in, I started at UCF in the summer of 2021, and just the change in the statistics of the students that are coming in. These kids are coming in with SAT scores in the 1300s and high 1300s. And I got a 1220 to get my Bright Futures. So it's insane to see the difference, not only in our athletics, but also in our new students coming in with our academics, and to see how strong of a university we are becoming. And it's only because of the alumni that have been able to stick around, and that we still have, I believe we have the largest living alumni base in the country, because all of our young alumni are so young. And most of our first round alumni, that graduated in the 70s and 60s, most of them are still alive. So we do have one of the largest alumni bases out there as well.
That's a stat you shared with me that just blew me away. And I think I told it to you, Jarad, too. 98.5% of UCF alumni is still living, ever.
Yeah.
That's wild.
That is a cool stat.
It's probably why you guys were able to move up to Big 12 so quickly. You guys got some pretty deep pockets. I didn't realize, that all the money keeps channeling back into Central Florida, and just the area here continues to grow. So it's insane.
Yeah, we've got some pretty cool people helping us out, and it's not, like I said, it's not only in our athletics, it's in the innovation of the school and things like that. I mean, there was a video that surfaced a few years ago of Robert Downey Jr. giving a kid a prosthetic arm, and that was like an Iron Man arm, and a UCF alumni and graduate created that arm, and now has Limitless Solutions on right off of campus. So it's not only the athletics that have brought that in, it's also just the innovation between NASA, between our prosthetics, between our engineering, and our robotics schools and things like that. Like, they all help in their own ways, and athletics has just been able to, catch those highs within 2013 and 2017 and 2018 and just ride them out. I mean, I look back and I can go back to 2015 and we literally lost every single game. And that was my first year of having season tickets. And then if you would have asked me in 2017 if we would have gone undefeated and I would have been in Atlanta at the Peach Bowl, I would have said, no, there's no way. So it's just crazy to see that and to see the donors and what they're looking to do. I mean, the new projections for our athletic area, our athletic complex is just crazy. I mean, they've been trying to get a lazy river in there for a few years now. I believe one day it's going to happen. I just, 10 years from now, 20 years, who knows? But they keep telling us it's coming. So we'll see what happens. But I'm just excited to see the program grow because of our amazing donors that we have, whether they're alumni or honorary alumni as well, too.
That's crazy. I hope they build some precautions to keep the Gators out of Lazy River because they'll find a way to get in there.
Hey, they're all over Florida. We got signs put up, so it's not our fault.
That's crazy. Speaking of the success there in Central Florida, Jarad, I'm going to defer to you. Excuse me. We're creeping up on early signing day. What is it you're thinking happens over the next couple of weeks as far as the Knights, maybe the Canes, Knowles, and Gators?
Going to be a wild finish here. You've seen the Gator class already take some hits. Some things were expected early on, but timing is never good. So Wardell Mack, of course, 4-star cornerback in Louisiana, flips to Texas. He was a guy that when he committed, everyone was like, it's kind of a strange commitment to commit to Florida, but Texas is the one to watch, obviously. He's going to flip that commitment to Texas. Nasir Johnson, 4-star defensive tackle from Alpharetta, Georgia. I think he's Alpharetta, Georgia. From Georgia. He flipped his commitment to Georgia. That one, I would say, that was definitely one to watch down the stretch. And then obviously Jamonte Waller, 4-star linebacker / DN, flips his commitment to Auburn. That one's the one that was most unexpected to me in regards to the Florida class. You still have a lot of things going on. Florida dropped from number 3 to number 5 overall in the recruiting rankings so far. So some more things to monitor. Signing day is going to be crazy here. The early signing day finish with NIL prevalent in the portal. You're going to see a lot of people make some last-minute pushes, quote unquote, not backed by any sort of financial, offers at all, because we keep it all on board here in
Sure.
football. But you're going to start seeing these final pushes from these schools as people miss on targets, or maybe somebody flips that you weren't expected. Maybe you all of a sudden have a free spot open that you weren't expecting that. NIL opportunity to be there, and now it's there. So definitely some pitches here down the stretch. As far as Florida State's in a great spot, moving up to number 4 as the Gators have had those 3D commitments. They're still in contention for a lot of things. You hear the name Jeremiah Smith roll around, number 1 overall player in the country, wide receiver here from down in South Florida. People, he's visited Florida State, he's visited Florida, he's visited all over. Honestly, Brandon, I don't see this happening for any school. I know that there's a lot of buzz out there on the social media and the online, but nobody plays the game better than this kid. And I've followed recruiting, 2 decades. Since I was in high school. Since I was like a sophomore in high school. No one in the world ever has played the recruiting game better than Jeremiah Smith. And I just don't see Brian Hartline losing this commitment at this point. If he was going to flip, he would have already done it, in my opinion. Early signing day, he's moving down the stretch, and I think he's going to be there. He's still going to flirt. He's still going to do his things. He's still going to up that NIL, opportunities. But, I in my opinion, that's where he's going to be. Keon Coleman is another guy, or not Keon Coleman, sorry. Obviously, Keon Coleman's a phenomenal receiver. Yeah. Another phenomenal receiver from the state of Texas, however, he's a 5-star commitment there at Texas A&M. So with Jimbo Fisher being fired, there's going to be a few things to watch down the stretch here with Coleman. So, he's visited Florida. I think he might have another visit scheduled for the Florida State game. Could be wrong on that. I'll have to look into that. So he's going to be one to watch. That's maybe going to be kind of opening things up. In that A&M class with Jimbo Fisher moving on, there's going to be a few players in there that are should be kind of people to monitor with who A&M hires. Okay. So, down the stretch, Miami just flipped a commitment, a defensive end. So, there's going to be moves to be made. So if you're there, if you're following it, I think UCF right now is number 1 class in the 12. That's kind of expected for me. As you see OU and Texas kind of move out of there, not a lot of recruiting powers. That conference is going to be wide open, right? So Kansas and Kansas State have built pretty good programs. Maybe Colorado moving in could potentially, but Deion Sanders has been very vocal about building that team through the portal and not so much high school recruiting. I personally think it's the wrong move, but he's been very vocal in that. So I don't think you'll see them make a splash here moving early Sunday. Maybe Jordan Seaton, 5-star tackle out of IMG Academy. I think he's another guy that ends up maybe in Ohio State. So obviously a lot to watch here down the stretch, but I think for the most part, you're going to see the Knowles finish the top 5 class. I think Miami's going to be outside looking in, maybe the top 15. Got to be interesting to see where the Gators finish. Can they hold on to a top 10 class? Can they hold on to a top 5 class? I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to see. Who's still available on the board and who they bring in. So should be some excitement off the field as well.
Gotcha, Brooke. I know that UCF has done pretty decent in the portal. Maybe the last couple of guys. What's your grade as a fan looking in? Like, where would you grade them on what Gus has done with the portal and with recruiting?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. As most know, our QB is from the portal. We picked up John Rice from Ole Miss, and he's here doing great things, I think, for our football team. But he's also a baseball athlete too, so you got to think of both sides for him. He's killer on the baseball field too. So it's been interesting in the portal. We've had some losses for sure. I know you mentioned Matt Lee at Miami. He did leave and he is in Miami now, but have our losses been doing better? I don't know. We've gained some from the portal, like I mentioned, with John Rice and as well as RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey was a transfer too, and he was a hometown kid. We keep hearing stories of all these players that have been leaving, and Gus is going into that portal and he's recruiting them back. We've been trying to keep our hometown boys here. We've gotten a lot of boys from the Sanford area. Damari Henderson, who had our 2 interceptions and 1 fumble this week, as a sophomore, he just got here last year, but he was here from Sanford. He's a hometown hero. So very excited to see what Gus continues to do in the portal. I think he's doing it really well. And I think his recruiting at home has been super awesome too. A lot of these, I went to an event in early June, and it was put on by Gus Malzahn's wife, Christy, and it was a ladies' night. And we got to hear from some of the coaches about their recruiting process, and they're focused on the state of Florida. They want to keep these guys at home. It's what makes the families happy. And when the families are happy, the guys are more likely to commit. So keeping in the state of Florida, I think, is a really good move for us. And then going in and pulling in the portal for some of those players that are more experienced at the higher level. I think he brought in JRP at a perfect time because, we needed someone who had the experience in a Power 5 team, and JRP had that. We didn't have being in a Power 5 compared to a Group of 5. The mentality is just so different on the field, and so we needed that level of experience. Bringing in Javon Baker and Kobe Hudson, from Alabama and Auburn, those guys have just been able to teach our younger players how to have that mentality of a Power 5 team, how to play bigger on the field. I think our biggest change when it's come to the transfer portal has been pulling guys that are bigger in size. When we played BYU a few years ago in the Boca Raton Bowl, the only thing I could think of was, wow, these guys are massive. And our players looked like they were 2 feet tall. So we've known for a while that if we were going to compete at a higher level, we needed the size. And so I think that's where the transfer portal has come into play, is pulling in those bigger guys until our guys get beefed up enough and stuff like that. So I think he's done a pretty good job. I don't know if I'd give him like an A or a B, but I think he's done a great job with that, and I can't wait to see what he does in the future too. I think the NIL is going to be a crazy thing. We're already seeing it this season with players. I think that's part of the reason why, a big reason why Matt Lee went to Miami was because of the NIL deals that he had there, that he was able to get there. So I'm interested to see what happens there. As Jared mentioned, with Dion pulling from the transfer portal with Colorado, with adding Colorado to the Big 12 next year, I'm really interested to see how that goes. I still have my doubts in him, but we'll see what happens. I'm glad to host him at home next year. Yeah. But I think he's going to be a big threat in the portal for sure, as he's already been. So I think we just got to keep an eye out on the NIL, see what we can offer these guys. And yeah, I think they've done a good job, but I think there's room for improvement always.
That's fair. I was kind of surprised to see your quarterbacks leave, and like Castellanos have, I wouldn't say immediate success at Boston College, but he gave Florida State all they could handle. And Mikey Keene, is that his name, out in Fresno State? I think they started off like a 7-8 game win streak. So, I mean, just back to what you were saying, Jared, and I'll let you further tell me about the recruiting a little more in depth of who's coming up, but it's crazy to think like traditional quarterbacks like Keene and Castellanos just won't fit into UCF, and that's why like Rice Plumlee's had success there.
Yeah, and I think that you're going to see a trend here in the portal. You look at, you look at what even Jordan Travis, not to deter from your point, but what Jordan Travis is able to do in year 7, and that's not me knocking him. Mertz is in year 6, and you see that in college football, if you can go get a guy who can play for you 6-7 years, or then you're gonna have a really experienced quarterback coming back. And what you've seen in Travis, you've seen like the resurgence of Mertz. Look at Bo Nix at Oregon.
Yeah.
And so, with that being said, quarterback recruiting going forward to me is going to be interesting. And so, with Malzahn obviously clearing out that room, he has a certain guy that he's looking for. Whether I agree with him or not, it doesn't matter, right? So he has a certain system and he wants to run it, and he's going to run it. So, they're going to continue to look for those dual threats, and that's a really good place to look, is in the transfer portal, because you have people who have ran more dual threat systems, more quarterback run heavy systems. And it's much easier to go get a guy who maybe, is stuck in like a more pro style form, but is an athlete. So one of the things that if I'm Gus Malzahn, and he can have my number, we can talk about it if he wants to. But I don't know if you guys saw that Chip Kelly's been fired at UCLA, right?
No, I didn't see that. Wow.
So Chip Kelly's out. Chip Kelly's out at UCLA. UCLA has a phenomenal former 5-star quarterback sitting on their roster. And so he's very dual threat, right? And it's going to be very interesting to see what he does, because he actually committed to Oregon, flipped his commitment really close to signing day there. Moore, I think Dante Moore is his name, flipped his commitment to go to UCLA to play for Chip Kelly. Now that Chip Kelly's gone, that's going to be someone that's going to be very sought after in the portal, but he's going to have to run a very specific system, right? So still has a long ways to go as far as like being consistently able to count on throwing the ball, but a really good athlete there. So I think that's going to be a guy that's going to be interesting to see where he lands and who he lands with, because I think he's going to be looking for, this type of style of football that can cater to what he does best, which is, have a little bit of question what actually here in his youth would be able to run the football. And if we've seen anybody that, loves quarterbacks that maybe aren't very accurate but love to run the football, it's Gus Malzahn. So, man, that's a guy that I think he'll definitely get a call from the Knights, I would bet, as you look for that. And so something to follow there. And then if Lincoln Riley, the rumors are true, obviously Caleb Williams going to the draft, but there's going to be some quarterback, changes there. You look at what Jimbo leaving A&M, there's some guys on the roster there. They're going to be jumping in the portal, some big-time defensive linemen, likely also some secondary players. So portal's about to be crazy.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy because I feel like at UCF, we've just kind of been playing catch-up every year. And I feel like, honestly, I think the NIL is going to help us with this a little bit. I think it already has, but we haven't had one of those 6-year, 7-year, 20-year quarterbacks, in a really long time. I mean, we've had pretty much every season in the last 10 years, we've had a different QB for the entire season, just based off of injury or deciding to sit out because they want to transfer. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. He was injured.
Yeah, right, Dylan.
Yeah. And things like that. So I think we've been kind of playing catch up, and luckily the portal has helped us with that. But I feel like it'll be interesting once I think Gus can kind of get in there and maybe get his franchise college QB. I'd love to see someone that we could have really great for 3 years, for their full 3 years. So I'm really interested to see if that'll happen anytime soon. I mean, unfortunately, I think we lose JRP this year. I think this is his last year of eligibility. So what's next? I don't know, but we'll see. And, if Gus goes out and hits the portal hard, I think we have a good chance of finding somebody to fill his shoes. So
speaking of last year's eligibility, Brandon, a very senior-laden Florida State team this year. Where do the Noles turn to a quarterback next year?
It's really tough to say. Jordan Travis has really pulled us out of a hole, as Brooke was mentioning. I mean, I don't think Tater Romaker was ever the answer. He has really surprised me the last 2 seasons in that I think the Louisville game in 2022, we would have lost without him. And yeah, Brooke called that. I remember we were talking about it after the game was over. And, the year before that, it was just abysmal play by him. And so he's not the answer. AJ Duffy's been a pretty good quarterback get for us, but he's had like 0 playing time. Like, he's the kind of guy, I think, if you don't fight to keep him, he's gone, and he's going to do really well somewhere else. Help me out, Jared. There's a quarterback we got, Luke something, who's coming in. I really think he might be the future, but you don't play a guy like that to start off, do you? I mean, if you do, it's a little concerning.
In today's college football world, more and more true freshman quarterbacks are being asked to kind of take over those roles. But I don't know if that's your answer year one at Florida State.
Yeah.
If you're bringing back the roster, you're bringing back, do you look to a true freshman and look toward a more rebuild year? I think that's a school that absolutely goes to the portal, right?
Yep.
To see what they can find. So that's going to be an interesting thing to follow for me is not only, obviously we still have the rest of the season to get through, but that Florida State future quarterback situation, I think is going to be fun to track because, where can you pivot to? And obviously there's going to be somebody out there.
Yeah. It's going to be something where you're going to want to do the running back by committee thing. Do you rely on Keziah Holmes? Do you rely on Hill to get you running? And that's what Mike Norvell's done for many years, right? Even back to his days in Memphis. Let me get some jackrabbits out of the backfield, and that'll open up the running game because of a threat. But I haven't seen a lot of, and maybe I could be wrong on this, I don't know the quarterbacks that we have coming in are going to be dual threat like Jordan Travis, so he can run. And it's been pretty clear early on in his career that was the only option we had because he's running for his life. Now we only run him if we absolutely have to. And so that's a sign of maturity to me. And so the offense, it's going to look different. It's going to be, you're not going to have a guy like Keon Coleman who's going to go up there and just snatch a ball out of underneath the hoop. And you're not going to have a 6'7" guy on your team next year. And so the offense will just look like you don't have any superheroes on it. And it's going to be, man, what a year we had. We took advantage of those athletes. So
yeah, I think Florida State's a team that you could look at being very portal heavy as they supplement the losses to get to the stopgap from their recruiting class this year, right? So they're going to bring in a really solid recruiting class. This is a team that I think will probably, and we've seen Mike Norvell do it before, utilize the portal to fill in gaps. So I think that's kind of what we'll see, just because they're replacing so much. They're not in a situation, what school is in a situation like Georgia where they just reload every year, or Alabama? No one is. Georgia could lose their entire starting 11, have another 11 of top 100 players, and that's just right. So, yeah, it's going to be something to watch. Early signing day is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing how the in-state schools finish and where we go in the portal, because there's going to be a whole bunch of names that aren't in the portal that you don't know, that you don't even think would be in the portal, that are going to be in the portal, this time in 2 weeks. So that's going to be fun. The same way with coaching, right? There's going to be guys that are interviewing for A&M job that you'd be like, no, they're never leaving. Well, maybe they're leaving. So, you're going to have a couple Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma to USCs this year, I think.
It's possible. It just started later this year than usual, I think. That's kind of odd. Man, well, this has been a great chat. I could go on for hours. We're going to have to go ahead and wrap it up, though. But FloridaFocusPodcast.com is the website if you want to reach out to us to give some feedback on what you thought on our special guest host, Brooke. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. It was super fun.
Yep. And don't forget, we're on Patreon, patreon.com/FloridaFocusPodcast. That gives you access to our text chain, and you get my cell phone number, so you can berate me as much as you see fit. Any final thoughts on the week that's coming up?
No, I'm just excited to see where we go in this playoff push. I'm excited to see what 4 get in.
Yep. Same for me. Oh, go ahead, Brooke.
I'm just excited for hopefully another UCF win. I got my eyes up at Oklahoma State this weekend too. They're playing Houston, and we have Houston in 2 weeks. So hopefully, Oklahoma State will provide a beat down for them too, and we'll get a little beat up Houston team for senior night. So I'm just excited to watch all around and finish out this season strong, hopefully, as a Knight.
Sounds fair. I mean, Florida State hoping to improve to 11-0, and it would be a 17-game win streak. It's been a long time since the Noles have been here, and it can't be understated just how much you should appreciate something like this. However it shakes out, if you're in the playoff or not, you checked off a lot of boxes this year so far, so it's going to be a successful season no matter what.
Yep,
for sure.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much for listeners for joining us. This is Brandon saying go Noles.
This is Jarad, and for Chris also, shout out my boy saying go Gators.
This is Brooke saying go Knights.